Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Furhana Afrid. This is probably the largest and most important political gathering in Butte. Food that will be taken up to the firefighters who are working that fire on really steep, rugged terrain. Do you have any strategies or policies that will revive this city economically? Butte will be the hub for wind turbine production for North America. Most voters want to see how these candidates will tackle critical issues they face every day. How important small states like Montana have become in this tight presidential race. The drivers of these big trucks make the job look easy. A man died after he was hit by a semi-truck. Let's now take you behind the scenes to meet a woman from Baltimore who has been volunteering for the Folk Festival for nearly 20 years. Crews here have spent several hours inspecting the 67-year-old deck truss bridge. This third offense becomes a felony and carries a stiffer punishment. And you can see just by how high the snow is, it's almost knee-deep. There were several issues that he talked about, but one that he elaborated on was energy efficiency. Now, my mother is in Africa, but if she were here, I would get her one of those cute sugar gliders. Reporting live from the Mayfair, I'm Furhana Afrid. Donna and Jay, Governor Schweitzer affirmed how important small states like Montana have become in this tight presidential race. He says it all starts right here in Butte, America.
We're going to move this event in Montana.
Now, Governor Schweitzer also added that both these presidential candidates need to take some notes and learn about Montana's potential to reduce the nation's dependence on foreign oil. Laurel, back to you. It took a year of preparation and hundreds of volunteers to make this festival come to fruition. Let's now take you behind the scenes to meet a woman from Baltimore who has been volunteering for the Folk Festival for nearly 20 years. And Laurel, Mary is one of more than 630 volunteers who will be working very hard throughout this three-day festival. In fact, most of the volunteers are from the mining city, and many of them tell us that they want these visitors to leave with a positive experience and then come back next year.
We do a very thorough job on inspecting our bridges. I've got a man that's spent 5 days on one bridge so far.
This is one of 9 deck truss bridges in Montana that is under scrutiny after the collapse of the bridge in Minneapolis.
Based on what we saw in Minnesota, take another look at our deck truss bridges to make sure that they are safe for the motoring public.
Montana bridges are inspected every 2 years, and additional inspections help to keep check on metal fatigue due to age, climate changes, and weight load from vehicles. Crews here have spent several hours inspecting the 67-year-old deck truss bridge. They've looked for loose rivets, cracks, and any other visible signs of stress.
The bottom cord is being pulled apart, so your steel is stretching, and you need to look for cracks or tears in the steel where it's stretched apart.
These officials say its intricate design makes it difficult to catch every sign of wear and tear.
All of the rivets and all of the different plates and whatnot, you would have to completely dismantle the thing to see all of the surfaces that could have cracks. This one would probably just go without anybody seeing anything. There were no cracks detected, no missing bolts, no loose rivets, nothing.
For Montana's news station, I'm Furhana Afrid. Andrea, this is the story of one lucky Butte man and his encounter with an avalanche 9 years ago. His gut-wrenching experience is still fresh in his mind. It has changed his life and his ride forever.
Don't feel comfortable doing that anymore because I don't want that to happen to me. Suffocation, I guess, is not a good thing.
39-year-old Montana native Doug Zemlak was an avid snowmobile high marker.
Everybody wants to be the king of the hill, see how high they can go, beat everybody else out. But nothing ever happened like this to us before, so we were taking a big risk.
Those lofty risks Zemlak and his friends took on Montana's Mount Odell changed his life and his ride forever one January morning 9 years ago. He believes he set off a quarter-mile wide avalanche that took him rolling down the over 9,000-foot peak.
It hit me fast. Everything went dark, and I tried to swim. I thought about it. It seemed like it went on for a long time. That was tough because there was so much pressure on me. It was tough to breathe. That was the hardest part. I could hardly talk when my buddies got there. And I was able to dig down towards my face and expose my mouth.
The thought of his friends finding him quickly was the only hope he could cling to. Were you frightened?
Sure.
What were you thinking about at that time?
I hope they come and find me. I was hoping that they would hurry up.
His friends spotted his hand. That visible sign helped them to get to Zemlak and dig him out. Zemlak says his days of high marking are over, and those who continue to take deadly risks for thrills may have to learn the hard way.
Those guys haven't had that happen to them yet. When they do, they might change their mind. And they see one of their buddies have that happen to them.
A happy ending to a painful ordeal and a lucky man to tell his tale. Zemlak says he wishes he would have prepared better and obtained an avalanche report so he wouldn't have had to go through this bitter experience. Andrea? This pure, unfiltered water residents use daily on the south side of Butte comes from the Basin Creek Reservoir. To keep more than 360 million gallons of water immaculate, this area is off limits to human activity.
Very, very pristine water supply, and we want to do all we can to keep it that way.
The mining city is blessed with water. A third of its water supply comes from this reservoir. But there's also a danger to this blessing, and that's the threat of fire in the hills surrounding this reservoir.
We see more and more of the dead trees caused by the beetle kill each year, so in just that is an increased catalyst for a potentially catastrophic situation here in the watershed.
Pine beetles are thriving in an environment of climate change and wreaking havoc on these trees in the watershed.
All of these trees around here are the same age. They're old, they're stressed from drought, and we've had warm temperatures. So the extent of this devastation is a combination of all those three things.
The county says this area has historically experienced some spot fires, but a wildfire could pollute the water here. Water that, except for chlorination, is untreated from the reservoir to the tap in your home or business. So a fire and its polluted runoff could force the county to shut down this source of your drinking water. What would happen then? Well, your tap won't run dry. The county can draw more water from the Big Hole River and the Moulton Reservoir, but those already supply 2/3 of the local water and can't fill all of the gap. So we would all have to cut back.
We're going to see some effects as far as conservation measures within the community, especially if it occurs in a hot, dry period of the year.
A high concentration of pollutants in the reservoir could also lead to the loss of the county's filtration waiver. If that happens, local ratepayers would have to build a water treatment plant, and that could take more than 3 years and cost around $15 million. The Forest Service says it's been removing the fuel buildup by logging over 1,000 acres of dead trees, with more than 500 acres yet to be cut down this summer.
We are going to affect how a fire burns. And again, with this buffer around the watershed, we're removing dead wood that would be available for a fire.
But the county says more trees need to come down.
Certainly it would be a benefit as far as any fire situation, especially in the immediate vicinity of the reservoir.
But Smith says the Forest Service won't log close to the water because it could spoil its purity.
We would have to have some sort of equipment in there, some ground disturbance. And again, with the level of water quality that's in that watershed, that was just it was a trade-off that we weren't willing to take.
These officials say there's no way of knowing the extent of pollution to this reservoir and the effects on the Butte community until a forest fire happens.
That hasn't taken place, and we'll deal with any fire situations as they come.
In Butte, I'm Furhana Afrid for Montana's news station. Good evening and thanks for joining us on tonight's broadcast. I'm Furhana Afrid. Leading our news, a defense attorney says he will ask for the trial of Wade Peterson to be moved to another county on Monday. That's because a review of the completed questionnaires point to a tainted jury pool in Butte Silver Bow. 21-year-old Peterson faces multiple felonies for allegedly killing a Butte teen and injuring 2 others. Peterson's attorney, Brett Belke, said he never thought Peterson could get a fair trial in this county and most responses to the questionnaires revealed that nearly 200 out of 250 jurors were exposed to media stories about the case. Some knew the families of the defendant and the victims. Belke adds it's difficult to determine if those jurors will keep an open mind. Butte Silver District Court sent potential jurors 67 questions more than 2 weeks ago to determine if a fair and impartial jury exists in the county. Now, Belke says after he and his co-counsel have reviewed all questionnaires, they'll decide their next step in the legal process. If the change of venue is granted and attorneys on both sides can agree on a new location, the trial will be moved there. But if they fail to agree, then the judge will determine the new venue. And developments on another Butte felony case. The Attorney General's office says a petition to Supreme Court to release a Butte man serving a 40-year sentence for stabbing another man to death should be denied. In October 2007, a jury convicted Jason Smith of fatally stabbing James Correa of Washington outside the Irish Times bar. He was sentenced in February of this year. Now, a petition was filed requesting the conviction be overturned and subsequently release Smith because of an improper verdict form. Attorney General Mike McGrath says Butte District Court did nothing wrong, and the Supreme Court will make its final decision on the petition. Also in the mining city, a group of volunteers hit the streets of Butte this morning to raise funds to help get a third flight into Butte. These volunteers on Dewey Boulevard started fundraising efforts at 6 this morning. Some drivers dropped their donations into a bucket and others inquired about the campaign. One volunteer told us many drivers were unaware of the challenges the airport is facing, and this fundraiser is also helping to educate people. The Bucket Brigade drive comes on the heels of a denial of a federal airport grant of around $255,000 that would have supplemented local funds to help secure an additional Delta flight.
Economic development, bottom line.
After spending 4 hours on the streets, all 15 volunteers went to the Butte Plaza Mall to collect more donations. This fundraiser is organized by several groups through the county's Lodging and Hospitality Association. In crime news, thousands of dollars worth of camping equipment were stolen from Montana Tech. Butte police say the incident happened sometime in the last 3 weeks but was only reported yesterday. More than $2,000 worth of sleeping bags, tents, stoves and other equipment were taken from a storage room. Police say there was no forced entry and the door may have been left open, making it easy to gain access to the equipment. If you have any information about that incident, please call Butte Police at the following numbers: 497-1120 or Crime Stoppers at 782-7336.